you think it would take to have more Black Americans become involved with clinical trials? And I know that's it's a heavy question. It's probably a whole conversation about it. But just kind of, what are some of the things that we can do to get more Black people involved in clinical trials?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I loved what Dr. Coleman said about building trust. And so that, requires continued education, continued discussion about clinical trials as an option to build trust in the system and trust between providers and patients. So that's a huge, huge point.
And also, I think we have to look at the whole picture, because when we talk about involving African Americans in clinical trials, or a lot of times we're talking after the trial has already began. But I think the focus, a big part of the focus should be when there is a new drug or possibility of a new drug, and it shows response to some illness, then the researcher has to me, an obligation, a social responsibility to say, how does this drug affect the all communities, not just Black communities, but all communities that may be affected by this drug, and what can I do to get everyone access to this drug? And there's so many different things, and you have to look at the social determinants of health. Mm-hmm. There's environmental concerns, there's food deserts, there's lack of transportation to this. So we have to increase accessibility also for the people who work along this stream of clinical trials, researchers and people who are involved in the process. And in addition, we have to bring the clinical trials closer to the patient. So we can bring the drug closer, we can bring the lab closer, we can bring everything closer and cut out that cost of traveling from Atlanta to Houston every 90 days. We have to get to the young people and get them interested in the scientific education, so that they will say, hey, I want to go into this clinical trial process. We have to loosen the exclusion criteria, so we can get more folks in, take a closer look at that. And also, everybody's involved, even the people we talk to, in regard to the churches. They have to be more open, and the gatekeepers at certain places have to understand that we're on an important mission of life-saving. It's a life-saving effort, and it's all going to help. Social disparities affect everyone.
And I would say that the providers have to have literacy.
Yes.
They really have to be very aware of their own biases. Mm-hmm. And they need to, to Leah's point, she brought up a very important point. We see this always in hub and spoke, which means if you happen to be, we are a hospital that is in the center and people refer to us from everywhere, so hub and spoke. When you have when your patient hits an end stage place and you need to transfer them to another facility that has different options, then the primary doc may feel like, oh, I'm losing my patient, which is, of course, one of the things that Leah mentioned. We need to get over that. We need to get real focused, keep the patient focused. And providers really are patient focused, but there's so much noise in the delivery of care that things get mixed up, right? So the counter to that is advocacy. We as individuals must advocate for our health, period. Mm-hmm. End. Not our disease, because we'll do that. That's a hot poker. But our health, which feels fine, and you just go about your business and you take it for granted. So if we have a patient that's advocating for itself, provider that is literate and keeping the patient centered, and all of the supports like the Leukemia Association and other associations. Also, let's not forget about the National Institutes of Health. There's a clinical center that has a number of clinical trials that are there, that you come to the clinical center and that's not costing you anything. All the care is taken care of. And to be resourceful. We are not in 95 anymore, 1995, right? We're in 22. So there's many ways that we can reach out for help. We may not have the answer, but there's so many options to do that. So I think that on the side of the provider, we have our role, and on the side of the patient, they have their role. And I think that synergy helps us to get this message out. And that itself, when we get in sync in that way, you will see trust bloom and we'll see health get better along with systems. But as you said, it's loaded and we could go on forever.